So this movie was really good. It scared me, but it was good. And as other thriller movies that I have watched in suspense, and I guess that would be considered horror, I did not watch this alone. Okay. This was a good movie. I will say that. Like I said, it scared me, but it was good. It had what's his name? I'll be forgetting people's names. Y'all just gonna have to excuse me for forgetting his name. Chris Pratt. That was his name. Chris Pratt. Okay, and I feel like they had him playing a role that he's played before. Like when he was in Jurassic Park, he played like that. I guess like kind of like woodsy maybe animal type guy. I mean, he wasn't like the animal guy here, but he was like the like the run around with guns, knows how to shoot things, type guy, whatever. But I really felt I feel like I felt a little bit of that scene in the beginning. It opened with like him, his wife, his daughter. I think they were having like I forgot what they were having, and he was applying for some job, and they gave him that call. Or it's like, oh yeah, we know you, pretty sure you're fit for the job, whatever, but we've already put somebody in there. And he was like, oh really? And it's that, you know, moment where he's like, and then they hang up, and then he like has a moment of rage for a moment. Anybody who's applied for a job, okay, especially if you've applied multiple times for a job, and they pulled the oh sorry we've already filled the position, even though like the position wasn't filled like literally a week ago when you applied for it. So it was like, okay, if you didn't want me to have the job, just tell me you didn't want me to have the job. But he had a real moment of rage, and I was like, I kind of feel that a little bit, like him, because that's life, like I'm not saying him like beating his trash can up was, okay, but like whenever you feel that way from, you know, the job situation, I was like, that's life right there. Like he just got hit with life, like what a lot of people have to deal with, like for real in real life right now. But he cools off and he goes back inside, and he mentions his father and something that his father did, and that's why he doesn't talk to him no more and doesn't let him see his daughter. And then they're watching the game, and then bam, these people just show up, and they're like, "We're from the future. Okay, we're y'all's like kids or grandkids. We're fighting a war, and we're losing, and we're conscripting y'all to help us now." And I'm like, "Oh my god!" And then, well, first of all, he had already, I think, been drafted and did his time in the military, or the in one of the branches of the armed forces. And I thought it was kind of messed up that they drafted him again. Like I get it, they needed help, and because he had been to war, so he knew his way around like war and stuff like that. But I just thought it was messed up that he got drafted again. But hey, he got drafted again. He got the thing stuck on his arm, and they're explaining stuff to him, talking about you have to complete like a tour, so to speak, and it's not gonna bring you back until you're done. And I was like, oh wow, that's kind of messed up. But they did that to keep people from deserting, and I guess they could not have people go AWOL or desert at that moment. So then he meets this guy. I think his name was Charlie, if I'm not mistaken. And he strikes up a conversation, and he brought up something that was like stupidly valid, or like understandable at least. He was like, "Hey, did you notice that like everybody who they brought here is like over 40, or like I think like 39 and up?" And he was like, "Now that you mention it, yeah, that does sound about right." And he was like, "Why do you think that is?" It's probably because he's like, "I bet it's because all of the adults are already dead, and if the people who are younger than us come back, it'll create a time paradox." And I was like, Charlie's on to something. So he was like, "Okay, well, yeah, that makes sense." And then they had said something like, "Oh, there was a lady that was like, so why don't you tell us like what we're going up against?" And she was like, Well, I mean, we could, but like, y'all would probably not want to go if we did. And they did kind of like briefly describe it. She was like, yeah, well, yeah, y'all should just keep lying to people. And they were like, we will. So then they're explaining like, okay, we're gonna jump you guys. Y'all are supposed to be like 10 to 15 feet from the ground, so just be careful. Now, for some people who needed as many people as they can get, the jump killed more people than the white spikes did. And I get it. My brother pointed out that, they said, we're holding this whole operation together with bubble gum and tooth floss or something like that. I can't remember. And I get that. But if you tell them, oh yeah, the drop's gonna put you like 15, I think 10 to 15 feet it was, above the ground, and they end up a skyscraper's height above the ground, y'all miscalculate. That like, I can understand like a couple of feet, maybe. But a couple of hundred of feet? Like I said, they killed more of their own people than the white spikes, just from the drop. The drop took off, I think like it was like more than half of them. And I was like, that is so sad. Like, people falling out of the sky, hitting things, hitting the skyscrapers, hitting the ground. He almost didn't make it. He had to like duck and, barely even made it in there. And then somebody fell on him. I was like, but anyways. So after that was done, they gathered, who all was left. And, they had this group of people, and they were like, we're gonna make it out of this alive. And he was like, and if anybody falls behind, we're not going back after them, because that's how you make it out alive. And he was like, oh no, we're not leaving anybody behind on my watch. And he was like, and you'll end up dead like everybody else. And I was like, they've been through a couple of tours, and they are hardened soldiers, so obviously. But anyways, so they all get together, and I think that their primary objective was to get rid of the white spikes. But so many of them had overrun the city. They basically were like, you know what? Screw getting rid of the white spikes. We're just gonna bomb everything. What we really need y'all to do now is go get the team that was, like the medical team or whatever. We need to get them because they have some test tubes or some stuff in it that we need. They get over there to the building. The team's all dead. They just hang it up in the ceiling. I guess the white spikes decided to save them for later or whatever. And they're like, okay, well, never mind. Just get the test tubes and get your butts out of there. We need y'all out of there with those test tubes. So I'm just like, oh God, what's gonna happen? These test tubes. Anyways. So they managed to get the test tubes, and then they go into that staircase. Oh, that staircase was haunting, to say the least. Them looking up, and it's like dark, like you can only see so much from the flashlight, and then just darkness above and below, and then it being like dead quiet, and they're like, oh God, they're in here, we know they're in here. And then those clicking noises, like, his wife was like talking about, when she was, I guess, helping with therapy with the people who had been back, who had survived. They were like, the clicking noises, I hear them in my nightmares. And the clicking noises, and I was like, oh, they're in there. People are gonna die. They're in there.